Hi, I'm Oscar,
And I'm Charlotte.
and together we're the F1 couple. And on this week's podcast, we're going to be talking about the French Grand Prix. It's just gone by and looking at the winners and the losers and some of those other drivers or teams that we think are worthy of a mention. And without further ado, I think we'll jump straight into the winners and start off with, I think, the clear big winner from the weekend, and that'll be Red Bull.
Yay, you're back on track.
Back on track of having the actual winner as the first winner. Yeah, I think this weekend was a little bit weird because it kind of was another one. I think a bit like maybe it was Barcelona where everyone just sort of felt that they were about where they should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So with Red Bull, I think it's just that they really perfectly executed that race. I think. Yeah, it was a star performance from them, really. Didn't necessarily. It was difficult to tell. I think whether they were the quickest on race pace or whether that was Mercedes. Obviously, they were clearly the quickest in terms of qualifying pace, with Max being like 2/10 clear, I think. But yeah, it was definitely close between them. I think Mercedes probably looked like they had the better pace on the hard tyres, but on the mediums, maybe Red Bull looking a little bit better. But yeah, I think they played a bit of a reverse. People saying they played a bit of a reverse Barcelona this weekend, doing to Mercedes what Mercedes did to them in Spain. And I think that's totally fair. I think that's exactly what happened. And it turned out to be a great race. I mean, Paul Ricard hasn't delivered in the 2 seasons that it's been on the calendar since it came back in 2018. But I think this race it really did.
Well, I found it exciting
Yeah.
just because Max won.
Yeah.
No, I honestly think it's becoming really clear now that actually Red Bull have got the pace this season, and I think this is just all very exciting. I know I say this every week, but it's just so exciting.
Yeah, no, you're right, it is. And it's the fact that, yes, we went to 2 street circuits and Red Bull looked like they had the quickest car by far. But before that, on the proper race tracks, if you want to call them that, then it looked like it was very close, and on race pace, then maybe Mercedes had the edge. But here, it definitely seemed that if they weren't neck and neck, then maybe Red Bull were even slightly ahead on this track.
I would say they were almost definitely slightly ahead. I just feel like Mercedes have just lost it a little bit. I'm saying that, and they're going to win this weekend now, aren't they? But they're not shining in the same way that they usually do. And I think that Max has the fire in him to push his car as far as it can possibly go.
Yeah.
Whereas Lewis hasn't got anything to prove. So while he obviously wants to do as well as he possibly can, I think Max wants it more.
Yeah.
And I think that's really showing.
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly see he's got that hunger in him at the moment. I mean, this has been his first real chance to challenge regularly at the front. Yes, he's had odd races within the season where he's been able to take wins and push to be like right at the front. But this is the first time where he's really got that chance to be up there every single race.
Yeah, and I think the thing is a massive factor is that he's finally got a teammate that is actually a teammate rather than a second driver. Like, okay, I appreciate that he's not going to be beating Max on a regular basis. He's not going to be probably even competing with him, but he's there to hold back Bottas, and he's there to hold back Hamilton if the chance is there, and it's exactly what Max needs. And I think for Red Bull, I think they've got a really good pairing.
Yeah, I think that's actually a very good point, because about the slight difference between having a second driver and like having a number 2 driver and having a teammate there, because Gasly and Albon, they never really affected the race in terms of Verstappen's race and how that was going at any point. But in the last 2 races, Perez has quite clearly done that. In Baku, where he was holding off Hamilton before Verstappen had his tyre failure, and in this race, okay, maybe not immediately like on track anything to do with Hamilton, but yes, he got past Bottas as well, so that's taking points off Mercedes and getting more points for Red Bull in terms of the constructors. But also, he did what he wasn't there to do in Barcelona, which was sit in the space so that Mercedes couldn't pit Hamilton like Verstappen pitted. If they wanted to do exactly the same strategy they did in Barcelona, because then they would have had to have been there to overtake Perez, and that would have, without doubt lost them time if that was the strategy they would have gone with. So yeah, I think it's clear that they've got a really winning pair on their hands at the moment, and it could be that now Verstappen, everything just coming together for Red Bull. Verstappen being having the season of his career so far. Red Bull having a second driver that's there, able to take points off Mercedes drivers and help Verstappen get wins and pick up the pieces whenever anything goes wrong. And also the third crucial element of having a car that's able to challenge on every circuit.
Yeah, I don't want to talk too much longer on this, but I almost wonder whether Red Bull is... I almost don't know whether it is actually Red Bull that has the car to challenge. I just don't think Mercedes necessarily does. I just don't think it's where it has been for the last few years.
I mean,
I think that's the biggest change. I don't think it's necessarily Red Bull have come on leaps and bounds.
Well, I think it's got to be a bit of both. Obviously, it's not a secret that the small regulation change for this year has hit Mercedes and Aston Martin teams harder than any of the others by quite a long way. But equally, if you looked at like the car that Red Bull started the season with in the last 2 seasons gone by, 2019 and 2020, then it was at the beginning of the season they had problems with the car, it being unstable in the rear, and the drivers not being able to put their 100% confidence into it. And that's different this year because those previous 2 years, yes, the car's grown over the season, and maybe towards the end it's able to challenge a bit more for race wins. But this year they have that from the off, which is a really important factor.
I think we should move on because we've talked a lot about that.
Yeah.
The other winner, I think, has to be George. And I know that I like George, but I mean, he's just had a phenomenal weekend for, I think, probably the first time we've seen him up there on pace alone. And that's just his skill as a driver and pushing that car as fast as he possibly can.
Yeah.
And I just think it was a really almost special weekend for Williams.
Yeah, I think in the hands of George Russell, I think probably 19 times out of 20 in a season is going to extract the best out of that car. And this weekend wasn't an exception to that rule, and getting through to Q2 again, and then obviously coming home in P12 it was. And bear in mind, this is a race where there were no DNFs, so that's not and there's no one who dropped back due to any sort of car error or sort of real performance error in terms of a spin or something like that as well. So that was purely on pace and the ability of his driving and the ability of the car itself, which was very impressive, but also slightly annoying that there weren't any DNFs. None of those drivers above him had any problems that meant he would then be up into the top 10
if
to
there
score
had
some
been,
points.
He would have crashed out behind a safety car. So I think that the situation is the same. And I mean, if nothing else, they're now ahead of Haas again. So
yeah, in the constructor standings, that 12th trumps Schumacher's 13th, I think it was last time out. No, it would have been less. Oh no, it was 13th. Yeah. So yeah, that's at least. I mean, still no points for either of them, so they won't be happy. But it's something. It's back. They should be there ahead of Haas. But it didn't necessarily look like it in qualifying. He was only 0.02 ahead of Latifi. Obviously, red flag interrupted for Schumacher's
Schumacher
crash.
was ahead of him in Q1.
Yeah. But Russell looked like he was going to be on a absolutely incredible lap. That would have put. It's really disappointing that we didn't get to see the end of it, because I think it would have been like something where he's up in ridiculous, the top 5 or the top 10, and we're like, what? But sadly not. But still a great performance. So it got him through to Q2 anyway, which is what that lap would have done. So ultimately, no difference. But yeah, I think a special weekend from him.
Yeah. Should we move on?
Yeah, down to some of the losers, I think, from this week. I think the team we have to start off with is Ferrari, who, yeah, it was a rather horrible weekend for them. I mean, off the highs of being on pole position in Baku and Monaco with Leclerc, and also, of course, Sainz getting a podium in Monaco as well, to then the lows of this the very next weekend, getting no points whatsoever and just being like really far off the place of their challenges for that third place in terms of McLaren. It was pretty dire. Like after qualifying, it was looking pretty okay, like like nothing spectacular, but nothing like pretty much where they should be. Sainz in 5th and Leclerc in 7th. But when it came to the race, they just looked completely off the pace of it. And I mean, that was shown. I mean, towards in the first stint and sort of towards halfway through the race, they didn't seem to be that out of place. They were sitting where I would expect them to be, sort of around where the McLarens were and where Gasly was. But then they just completely dropped back. It's like they couldn't get the best out of the tyres at all.
Yeah, I mean, it was even to the point that I appreciate there was the Hamilton Verstappen thing going on at the front, but like I almost didn't notice them slip back so much.
Yeah.
And then it was at the end, and I was like, "Oh, okay, fair enough."
Yeah. I mean, I think Leclerc did a 2-stop in the end, which is why he was so far back. But yeah, Sainz didn't. He just sort of gradually slipped back through the field, and it was a hard watch. Certainly, if you're a Ferrari fan, I'm sure of that. But I think Leclerc it felt like he was struggling all weekend, and listening to his radio and sort of qualifying in the race, he just really didn't seem happy with the feel he was getting from the car. And yeah, behind Sainz pretty much all of the weekend for him as well. So especially disappointing for Leclerc, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought, don't think we should really
it was just
dwell on
bad.
them anymore. Yeah. So just so unexpected after the last two races. Maybe that's the hard reality of how their car performs on a normal racetrack. Just like their performances may be enhanced on the street circuits like the Red Bull, but to quite more dramatically poor on a traditional circuit.
It will be more telling when we have fake Austria and then real Austria.
Yeah.
And then I guess the other one is Ocon, really.
Yeah, I think, like as I was saying earlier, it's one where there were no real massive winners, no real massive losers, like not copious amounts of them, just everyone was sort of what you expect. But Ocon's probably the other, alongside Ferrari, the other notable one that was out of position. Especially disappointing for him, being French, driving an Alpine, a French car, so home race for both himself and the team. And yeah, a huge disappointment. Alonso seemed to be pretty on the pace this weekend and really outclassed Ocon and outshone him, which we haven't seen that much of this season. But maybe
refreshing.
Yeah. He's starting to come a little bit more. Certainly in, not so much in Monaco, I don't think, but in Baku, he was certainly had a much better race than Ocon. Well, Ocon was had a mechanical early on, but Alonso had put in a superb race there to come home well inside the points. And again, here he did a great race to come back 8th, I think it was in the end, which is a solid points for Alpine. It's not spectacular, but Ocon well off of that. After qualifying in 11th, that's usually the place where it's almost better than being 10th, because then you get to mix it up on strategy a little bit. But couldn't do anything. I don't remember a lot of him from the race. It wasn't particularly memorable, but coming home in 14th, it's particularly poor.
Which I'm a bit sad about, really, because I really thought he was starting to shine a little bit. I know I said right at the beginning that I was not really sure that I had that much confidence in him, and I honestly wasn't too sure about his future, actually. But yeah, it felt a little bit like old Ocon again, I guess. But he
Yeah.
like just slipping under the radar. That's all he did for me last year. But it wasn't disastrous. It just wasn't that great.
Yeah, just nothing real of interest happened to him. I think I just felt the Alpine, after some of the practice sessions, it felt like the Alpine was going to have like decent pace in it, but as it transpired, it didn't in his hands at least. But in Alonso's hands, he managed to at least extract some more from the car.
Yeah.
But I don't really have any more to say on
No,
Ocon.
I
I
don't.
couldn't really pick out any more losers.
No, it was just a bit.
Yeah.
Right at the front, it was very exciting. Not a lot else happened.
Yeah, I feel like the midfield battles, there were still some good overtakes compared to like previous Paul Ricard ones, but it just felt like they were still by drivers who were in the positions they should be. So I think there were some who will certainly had good drives, and we'll come on to them in a sec in the honourable mentions bit, but no one else that really shone, and no one else that was like, oh, that was a really shocking race. You know, like the Haas cars, they were still at the back. Latifi was still just ahead of him. Like Snowden was in like 12th or something, where you'd expect. Just the Ferrari ones where they were like super out of position, where you'd expect knock on as well. So yeah, we won't waste any more of our listeners' time, and we'll move on to those who are worthy of a mention. I think we should start with Lewis Hamilton, who I think actually had an incredibly strong weekend. And
especially in comparison to the last couple.
Yeah. I mean, I think I actually said, I think in the last podcast, that I thought he was having a really strong weekend in Baku, right up until the point where he clicked a button on his wheel and
don't mind me, I'm just going to carry on.
Yeah. But I thought up until then he'd had one of his strongest races of the season, given how far off the pace the car seemed to be. And I think pretty much the same thing this weekend. Obviously, the car not quite as far off the pace as it was in Azerbaijan, but it didn't look as certainly in qualifying, it wasn't anywhere near as quick as the Red Bull. As I said, Max 0.2 ahead. But in the race, I still think Red Bull probably had the best car, and he was one lap away from winning. So it just felt strong, and it was a bit annoying because it just sort of felt like everything else, annoying for him, that everything else sort of conspired against him. Obviously got a little bit lucky at the start when Verstappen went off at turn 2, and he managed to nick in front and get into first, but then Mercedes made some sort of horrible miscalculation at his first pit stop, which meant he then came out behind Verstappen. Sort of an inexplicable mistake, I think, from Mercedes, that.
Actually, while we're talking about Mercedes, I know we weren't planning on talking about this, but what are your thoughts on Bottas's strategy?
Yeah, well, I mean, Bottas and Hamilton, they had the same strategy. The problem was that, I think, well, firstly, Bottas went for the undercut on Verstappen, like, good plan, and he nearly pulled it off. But then, Mercedes didn't then think about, oh, well, if we know we can undercut, we're going to be close to undercutting Verstappen from, like, 2 or 3 seconds behind, and then not, like, considering the fact that Verstappen's then going to pit, which means he's going to have a chance to undercut Hamilton. It just was, a bizarre mistake to make. So surely just bring Hamilton in the lap after Bottas, and then you don't need to worry about any undercut from Verstappen on Hamilton for the lead. And I think that ruined his race. I think if it had come out in first, he'd have won, because on the set of tyres, the hard tyres they're on then, the Mercedes were looking much quicker than the Red Bull, which is why I think Red Bull then had to pull the strategy to say, okay, we're going to go for the medium tyres and try and then chase them down. Because I think on the hards, I think Mercedes, as they looked quicker, I think at some point Hamilton would have thrown a move and got that done.
Bottas certainly wasn't happy about it.
Yeah, Bottas, I think, and then coming on to that, when Verstappen's pitted, what I would have wanted to see Mercedes doing, what they should have done, I think, is just split them. Yeah, fair enough, Hamilton's in the lead, leave him out. You can probably, if that's what you want to do, leave him out in the lead and not worry about that. But pit Bottas, You've got nothing really to lose there. He'll come out, probably behind Verstappen still, well, almost certainly, but he then is on the same tyre. If they left him out for, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 more laps and then pulled him in, and then he can put in some super quick lap time, so not need to worry about tyre wear. Like with Verstappen, he still needed to worry about tyre wear because there was still a fair way to go. So yeah, I think they kind of dropped the ball a bit with leaving them both out. On
Especially
the same
because
strategy.
it's not like he would have lost a position. There was a point where it was he was not going to catch Perez, and then there was like a 50-second gap to Norris, and I'm thinking, just go in for fastest lap or just do something. Don't just sit there and let him.
Oh, in terms of after when he got passed by Perez.
Yeah.
Well, I think the thing with that was like Perez and at the end Perez and Bottas were under investigation for I think Perez potentially having overtaken Bottas off of the track. So Mercedes the thought behind it was if they leave him out, then they can get third. If Perez gets that 5-second penalty and Bottas is within 5 seconds, but as it turned out in the end, Perez didn't get a penalty and Bottas wasn't within 5 seconds, so it was kind of all pointless anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, should we stop complaining about the weekend that Mercedes had?
Yeah, I think Mercedes had a bad weekend. I was tempted to put Mercedes in the losers column as like a team, but taking Hamilton out of that because he was almost a winner in my eyes. So yeah, that was my thoughts behind it.
So I guess if we're speaking of teams, McLaren, I think, I don't know, they just arrived.
Yeah, it was just another solid weekend from them.
Yeah, from qualifying, I wouldn't have thought that would have happened in a million years.
I can't remember where they were in qualifying, but they weren't that strong, were they?
No, I thought it was like
they must have been
towards 10th,
like sort of 7th. I think Ricciardo might have been 10th.
Yeah,
maybe
I
might
thought
be
Norris
incorrect.
was behind this week.
Oh, maybe.
Anyway,
no, Norris was definitely ahead because I remember Ricciardo got past him at the start. So they might have been like, I really can't remember. They might have been like 8th and 10th or something like that. But yeah, out of position from where you'd maybe expect them to be. But it gets quite bunched in the midfield there during qualifying. So can forgive. But then they came back. They came back in the race and 5th and 6th. That's exactly where I'd say exactly where they want to be. Ultimately, they want to be 1st and 2nd. But realistically, with Mercedes and Red Bull taking up the first four places, then 5th and 6th is exactly where they need to be, especially in terms of getting their hands on that 3rd place in the constructors. And with the diabolical race that Ferrari had in terms of pace-wise, then this is a huge step towards that 3rd place in the constructors for them. I mean, obviously, still it's very early on in the season, but yeah, it certainly is like races like this, they can make the difference. That's a big chunk that Ferrari would now need to make up in coming races.
I think that they have it pretty much in the bag.
Yeah, I think so as well. It's like Ferrari are clearly faster than them round like street circuits, but most of the races are on more traditional circuits anyway. But McLaren are still not that far behind on street circuits, but on the evidence of this weekend, quite far ahead on more traditional race circuits.
Again, I think we'll definitely see a little bit more from this weekend and next weekend and see what happens.
Yeah, it's just I don't have much more to say on McLaren. They both did pretty well.
Yeah. On Gasly, I am so impressed with Gasly this season. It was nothing out. I cannot believe that I'm saying this, but the 7th is just exactly what I would expect from him.
Yeah, I've written down here. It's just another Gasly weekend, and he's just doing
phenomenally well.
Yeah, it's just what we're going to expect from him. It's difficult to actually judge him properly in terms of where he is in terms of like the car. Is that actually where the car should be? Because obviously he's got Tsunoda as his teammate and he's a rookie, and it's very difficult to compare when you've got comparing someone who's like only ever their 7th race in Formula One to someone who's had four or 5 years of experience now. So it's difficult to compare him in terms of that, but I think he's out-driving the car.
I think he is.
I think he's always extracting the max from it, if not like more,
Yeah.
if
I
that's
think
possible.
since he got his win last year, I just think he's had a massive confidence boost, and he feels like a different driver to me.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he had it even before that. I think at Red Bull was a big blow for him, but going back to it was Toro Rosso then, and then crucially, I think getting that podium in Brazil, that was the real step that he needed to then go on. And last season he was brilliant and obviously got a win, which was outstanding and unprecedented. And this year again, he's come back and looked super strong.
You say it was unprecedented, but I did say I made a joke about it, and you were like, "Nah, that's not going to happen." I was like, "It is. Just watch." But yeah, just another Gasly weekend.
Sixth in quali, 7th in the race. Just great. I think I might have been tempting to put him in the winner if he hadn't have dropped back one place, because I mean he got undercut again. He got undercut in Monaco, and he got undercut again at Paul Ricard. So maybe next time he should stay out, come in a little bit earlier.
That's not necessarily just his fault.
Actually, no. In Monaco it was an overcut, wasn't it? He got overcut and now he's got undercut.
I don't know what the difference is.
Maybe in the next one he'll be wobbling free.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Good job, Pierre.
Yeah, nice one, Pierre. So I've got one more honourable mention to throw in, and I think that's going to be the Aston Martin boys. They just seem to, the last 3 races they've had this knack that seemed like no other team seems to have thought of doing, which is just going really long in the first stint on like hard tyres, and then like not worrying about fighting, like battling anyone and getting caught up in traffic, and then coming into the pits and coming out ahead of all of their rivals that they've been behind. And well, once again, they use that hand.
I like it.
Yeah, in the French Grand Prix.
Sneaky.
I mean, it means maybe their sponsors don't like it quite as much, because they don't exactly get a lot of camera time, because most of the time
this Lance Stroll thing, I think he's getting a lot of camera time.
Yeah, but most of the time they're just sort of sitting in clear air, but like between the guys at the front and the guys from the midfield who have pitted, there's usually like, I don't know, a 30-second space or something, which they're sort of planted in the middle of. But it's a strategy that's clearly been working wonders for them, and Stroll was out in Q1 without setting a time, and that's the second race in the row. So
nice one,
hopefully Lance, next time you'll actually get a lap in qualifying. That'd be nice. But yeah, and I think Vettel was out. He's qualified 12th or something like that. But yeah, used strategy perfectly to come back and get into the points. 9th and 10th, I think it was in the end. So yeah, I mean, I don't really think they could have extracted any more from the weekend with the car and the circuit that they had at their disposal. I think that's probably the max after qualifying. So yeah, I don't think they'll have any real complaints. Double points finish is good. Obviously not as good as they seem to have, again, like Ferrari, more pace on the street circuits compared to their rivals.
That's not surprising though, is it?
Why?
They're both the same sort of car.
I don't know. The Aston Martin's way more like the Mercedes than the Ferrari.
I thought you said Mercedes.
No, the Aston Martin.
No, I thought you said the Aston Martin was like the Mercedes,
No,
and I was
more
like, well, that's not really that surprising,
No,
is it?
more like the Ferrari.
Right,
yeah.
okay, I'm sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so
Don't mind me.
maybe it is a bit surprising that they're able to get more of a street circuit and Mercedes can't, but yeah, I don't know. I think Mercedes have more of like a fundamental tyre and a setup issue that they have at the moment. Do you have anything else to add on Aston Martin?
No,
Just they was solid.
Yeah.
Well done. I think, again, maybe could have put them on the winners, but wasn't quite spectacular enough, I don't think.
it's not
Sort of,
quite meet your criteria.
they're about where you'd expect them to be if you'd have said, Aston Martin get 9th and 10th at the before the weekend started. Yeah, you'd probably said that sounds about right. But after Stroll started right on the last row of the grid, then it'd have probably been like, oh, actually, that's been quite a good race.
Yeah. Shall we wrap it up?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've got Austria, but it's not actually Austria
Fake
coming
Austria.
up next. Yeah, it's another version of the Styrian Grand Prix, but weirdly before the Austrian Grand Prix this time, due to rejigs and Canada being cancelled and Turkey being cancelled and France being moved. Yeah. So yeah, it should be good. I don't dislike the fact that there's a Austria double header necessarily. Obviously, yeah, I would have rather had either like Canada or Turkey. They're two of the best tracks really. Certainly Canada is one of my favourites, and Turkey delivered a really weird spinny race last year.
I'm very disappointed that I'm not going to get that little meme again.
Yeah.
Never mind. Actually, speaking of things that are disappointing, where was the rain?
Yeah, but surprising. I just thought like as soon as we tuned in, it's like, oh, there's actually going to be no rain, or like there was a 10% chance, which is basically there's going to be no rain.
Very upsetting.
But I was like, oh well, that's that gone then. It's not just going to be a proper boring race now. But I don't think it needed the rain. I really don't think it needed the rain.
I don't know. Anyway, let's wrap up.
Yeah, I think Austria, I mean, there's always seemingly a chance of rain there because it's in the hills. So, maybe in one session out of the 2 weekends we're going to get there. We're gonna get some rain, but yeah, we shall wait and see. I think it'll be a good race. Austria always seems to deliver fairly well, at least. So yeah, we'll be back next week for looking at the winners and losers of the Styrian Grand Prix. As always, you can find us on socials, Instagram, Twitter, all that lovely stuff. We're at the F1 Couple. Feel free to let us know your winners and losers, and give us a like, subscribe, or follow, whatever it is on whatever platform you're listening or watching us. And yeah, I've been Oscar, and you've been Lots. And until next time, we'll see you later.